Hey there, my name is Anthony. I'm a senior software engineer and I've started a couple SaaS companies before, and I just started a brand new one called Magic. And I'm going to take you through how I pretty much built this in a bit over a month. It sort of depends on what you count starting the application, but it took around 4 to 5 weeks once we had the idea to build this out. I'm going to show you the exact tech stack we used and why I think each choice is suitable for our application that we plan to scale to a lot of customers. And first, I'll give you a quick walkthrough of the app just so you understand some of the functionalities. We have a basic home page. We also have a page where you can just type in someone's Instagram handle, and it does a bunch of background processing that we've programmed in to get some details about their Instagram profile, the advertisements they've done in the past, creators that are similar to them with similar audiences, and a whole bunch of cool stuff. And there are some other cool features, but I'm not going to go too in depth because the functionality is mostly the same. So first of all, we're going to talk about the framework I used to build this, which is just Nextjs. You're probably familiar with Nextjs. It is a React framework that allows you to build server-side rendered applications, and it is very standard. I chose to go with Next 14, which is a newer version and a lot less stable. Previously, I've worked with Next 13 and 12 extensively, and it is a lot different, and it's sort of a big change to go from working from 12, pretty much the routes folder, to the applications folder. But I sucked it up, I learned how it worked, and it turned out to be not as complicated as I thought it would be, and I ended up just implementing it, and it's, not that bad. I like the fact that it keeps your files a lot more organized. It's just a bit of getting used to. So I'd still recommend using the app folder if you're brand new to Nextjs and you had to choose to learn one. Just learn the most recent version, which is Next 14 with the app folder. And Nextjs is unique in the sense that we didn't just build the front end on it, but we also have our back end, pretty much just a couple of calls that the server side will make, hosted through Nextjs as well. So it actually saved us from having to make a whole nother repo. The only caveat is if you think your calls are going to take a large amount of time, you probably want a dedicated backend, because I've gotten burned in the past with my previous startup where the Nextjs, the actual calls on the server side might take like 5 to 10 seconds, and they end up charging you a lot of overage, especially once you reach a lot of numbers. My other startup is currently getting around 500K page views per month, and when something takes like 3 seconds to load and it's not cached, that adds up, and you end up getting charged a lot in what's called serverless function hours. So anything that you think is going to take more than like 5 to 10 seconds at scale, you probably want to have it either cached or you have a dedicated backend for it. Right now, our calls are pretty quick, and anything that's not quick doesn't run on the next backend. So I'll get into that in a bit. But that's why I'm comfortable with just not having a backend and having everything, the front end and quote backend on Nextjs. The next is the UI. You'll probably be able to tell if you're familiar with the UI libraries at all, but we just used shadcn for the actual themes. And shadcn is a great component library with a lot of amazing choices. And the key to shadcn is that when you actually download the code to your repo, it doesn't just sort of get the whole package. You pretty much only install the specific components you need, and it's built on top of another UI component that's pretty lightweight called Radix or Radix. And you essentially can see the code. The code just gets installed to an actual folder in your application as opposed to the node modules like a regular library would. And it is amazingly useful to just add small amounts of components here and there and make them customizable to whatever you need. Previously, if you check my channel, you'll know I'm a big Material UI fanboy, and I'm still a fan of Material UI, but it can be a bit overbearing. It caused us a bit of performance issues in my other startup. And that ended up not playing too well. So I'm pretty happy with the fact that you can play around with the code. You can choose what you want to pull in. And the style is very modern and minimalistic. You'll probably see this type of style on a lot of like modern day websites and stuff like that. It's just very simple. The next thing is I'm actually using a second UI library, and that is called Tremor. And I specifically use Tremor for the graphs in our application. So anything that requires like a graph or some kind of chart, a lot of the charts, like for example, if you go to shadcn, their examples and themes, you'll see they have graphs here, but under the hood, if you look at the code, is using recharts, I think, which is a super old library. And a lot of these charting libraries are super hard to use, but Tremor is like a lifesaver. I actually talked to the founder of Tremor, super cool guy. And that was after I started using it, so he didn't convince me to use it or anything, but it is an amazing library for charts and visualizations. And they also have some other components that are really useful as well. But the charts and components by far have to be the easiest components. Like, look at this code. It's so simple. Like, just to make a simple bar chart like this, it looks great. It's minimal. It fits in with like Tailwind if you're using Tailwind. And if you're using ShadCN, you are using Tailwind under the hood. So just beautiful. Now let's talk about the actual hosting of the application. Hosting is done pretty simply. We just host it on Versal. They essentially just allow you to connect a GitHub or a GitLab repo. We use GitLab, and it makes CI/CD pretty much as soon as I push the code, it straight up just updates on Versal. And I've done really complicated CI/CDs in the past for my other company. And man, dealing with AWS, Elastic Beanstalk instances, EC2 instances, just like deployment scripts and stuff like that in GitLab, compared to just being able to push and it updates within a minute on prod, you can't beat that. And a lot of services have that, I realize, but Versal they're the people that made Nextjs, so they've optimized really well for how Nextjs code runs. And usually I find that these sites are always pretty performant out of the box. So Versal, pretty cheap, $20 a month. You can enable advanced analytics, which sort of replaces Google Analytics and stuff like that, which I've actually felt helpful now that Google Analytics sucks ever since they switched over to GA4. Versal is just like pretty much the standard thing to go. And if you're just doing something for a side project or you're not planning on scaling it really heavily, they have a free tier, which is pretty generous. So I'd recommend checking that out. The next thing is I bought our domain through Cloudflare. And I used to buy my domain on like AWS or GoDaddy or Namecheap and stuff like that. Cloudflare is by far the best place you could buy and have your domain on. I mean, not only do they give you like a bunch of analytics for free and stuff like that about what's happening to your domain, how many people are hitting it, how many bots are crawling it, how many bots are trying to attack your site, but they allow you to have this under attack mode. And my other website was getting DDoSed a lot by one of our competitors actually. And we ended up switching the domain over to Cloudflare in like a panic after like 2 hours of downtime. And we enabled the under attack mode, which just adds a little CAPTCHA to the beginning of the site load. And it completely solved our problem. And we were able to come up with a long-term solution, but it is just so good. The value you get from even just the $20 a month plan on Cloudflare is non-beatable. I wish I knew about Cloudflare like more than a year ago. Oh man, it could have saved me so much time in the past. Cloudflare is by far the best thing to buy your domain on. You can just point some of the domain records over to Versal so that it does the actual hosting for you, but it will still pass through Cloudflare servers most of the times if you enable it as a proxy, and it's just amazing value what you get from Cloudflare. Highly recommend it. I already talked about this, but we do use GitLab. GitLab is so much better than GitHub if you haven't already switched, not only for CI/CD, but you get private repos for free practically. I have close to 100 repos on GitLab. I have never paid for GitLab. All of those repos have deployed something. I even have private NPM packages, and you can just host that on GitLab for nothing. You can't do that on GitHub. The only downside is you don't get a little green dot on your like contributor thing if you're one of those people that cares about how your like contribution thing looks on GitHub. But GitLab, I would use it over GitHub every day of the week. Absolutely amazing. In terms of, I talked about backend, and the majority of our backend is hosted on just the app folder of Nextjs. So in Nextjs, you can host like a mini backend as well. But there are some things, like I said, that take longer than 10 seconds. And this thing includes like when we were pulling all our initial Instagram profiles to our application, we wanted to do a somewhat heavy process, which might have taken around 10 seconds per person. And we have over 60,000 influencers. And for new influencers, it'll be the same, but essentially we have a background, sort of a worker running on Heroku, a node script that indefinitely runs on Heroku. And whenever somebody inputs a new user, that node script will run that like 10 to 20 second process, just so it's not running on Versal and we don't get charged a bunch of money. And then what we do is we listen for any updates on that process through the Nextjs app. And whenever we get updates that something is pulled or a bit of that process is completed, we start to populate the front end. So it sort of acts as like a pseudo backend, but in reality, it's just a giant queue. And to manage that queue, we're actually using Upstash, which uses Redis under the hood. And I didn't include this because it's very specific to our application, and I don't imagine a lot of you guys will ever have to do something like that. It's only specifically because we're pulling information from Instagram, then we're running a bunch of AI processes on it, then we're like running a bunch of like even more AI processes on it. So that process takes a while. But If you're not doing anything like that, you probably don't need anything like that. But if you are running a standard backend, I do recommend hosting it on Heroku. You get a lot of great value from Heroku. Now, in terms of the actual database and user authentication, we run all of that through Supabase. If you're not familiar, Supabase is essentially a really well-made wrapper on top of Postgres. And I've used vanilla Postgres before, hosted on Amazon. We use pgadmin to connect to it, and Supabase blows it out of the water. Supabase makes working with Postgres so easy. If I could go back in time and make my other application use it as opposed to Supabase, I definitely would have. It just makes creating tables, modifying data, searching for data, filtering data, making SQL functions, filtering your data, all of that stuff so simple compared to like just hosting a headless Postgres database on Amazon and then having to go through the process of like either SSH into it or connect to it via terminal or use like a really bad UI like pgadmin to connect to it. Supabase, by far number one. They also allow you to authenticate users extremely easily. They allow you to integrate with Stripe, which is the next thing we're about to talk about, really easily. And that brings us to Stripe, which we use for payment collection. Stripe is like tried and true. Their documentation is some of the best documentation in the game. I might be a little biased because I did work for Stripe for a bit as a consultant, but I absolutely love using Stripe for payment processing. It's super easy to integrate into your application, especially if you're using Nextjs and Supabase. If you're using even just like a vanilla JS integration with it, which I did for my other company, it's also very good because the documentation is top tier. You can find almost everything you need on it. It's so well documented. I highly recommend. Now, I did mention I was doing some AI processing, and if you're looking to build something that adds AI into it, it is so easy now. A lot of these AI companies that you see, a lot of these AI SaaS tools that you might see, these guys are just, a lot of them, just what they call like ChatGPT wrappers. They pretty much call like the GPT API, the OpenAI API that calls the GPT model. They're pretty much just calling that and then wrapping the response and giving it to you. And I know some companies that are making 50 grand a month in monthly recurring revenue, MRR, just from being a ChatGPT wrapper. And yeah, OpenAI has one of the most useful APIs out there. You can use the GPT API for text completions. You can even, they have a vision API. I've never tried it out. They have an image generation API, which is probably similar to like DALL-E or Midjourney. They have an embeddings API, which is what we use under the hood for a lot of our processing. And finally, one of the ones I don't see a lot is their text-to-speech and their speech-to-text APIs. So this allows you to, for example, pass in a video and get a transcript of that video, or vice versa. You can get the speech for some text that you pass in. And the AI is top-notch. Like, nobody out there has better AI than OpenAI right now. I know it's debatable, but in terms of the API, that is definitely true. And the final thing I want to talk about is Figma. And I'm not a UX designer by any means. I suck at UX designs. But I do know how to use Figma, and it is made by programmers. It's almost like for programmers. If you know how to code and you know how to do React, Figma will come very naturally for you. There are components, reusable components in Figma, just like in React. You can style things in what's called auto layout, which essentially is just Flexbox if you're familiar with CSS. And you can create some cool things really easily. Another hack, if you are not a UX designer, is you can find a bunch of free designs that people have made just by searching through it on the Figma community board. And you can just copy the things you like and just make your own Figma out of it. Like our footer, for example, I just found somebody else's footer that they made public through the thing, and I just copied it over. You can also do things like I'm using Shad CDN. So to keep things consistent, all I did was generate a theme from Shad CN, and I implemented all the colors. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it, but we actually have like a bunch of our colors variables and typography variables here, so that I can just simply make text with one of these variants, and then I can implement it in code. For example, you can see this is an H1. This title is an H1. I know that when I'm using Shad CN, all I have to do is give it the same style that an H1 would have, and it'll match this pixel perfect. Also, there is a UI kit for Shad CN. So for example, if you are using some Shad CN components, somebody has already made those components in Figma, so you can just copy and paste those Figma components into your application and just change the color if you're using non-default colors. And the same thing goes for Tremor. That's how I got these like graphs and stuff like that from Tremor in the UI. pretty much like I just copied them from their official Figma pack and I just add them to UI and change the color. And my UI looks exactly like this for the actual graphs, like the colors and the styles and stuff like that. So Figma, it seems a bit daunting at first, but just like watch like a 30-minute YouTube channel, learn how auto layouts work and learn how components work, and you'll be zooming on it. And as you can see, like the UI is by no means like the best thing in the world. I'm not a UX designer, but I know how to use Figma, and it saves us a lot of time because you can a lot more easily realign things and design things and see if they look okay and sort of prioritize what should be at the top and what should be at the bottom when you're looking at it on Figma versus if you're sitting there coding and thinking while you're coding, how should this look? And it also makes it so that when you're coding, all you have to do is focus on making sure the designs are being matched by the code. You don't have to think about how anything looks. It just makes it a lot easier to code as well, and it makes it a lot faster. So that is pretty much it. I'm going to be making a couple videos here and there documenting my startup series. I ran another startup before, like I said, for 4 years, and I regret not documenting its journey. But for this one, I will document its journey. Some notable things are going to be like we're planning on applying to Y Combinator. I doubt we'll get in. It's a 1% chance, but who knows? It doesn't hurt to apply. And we're working on getting our first customer since we just launched. And we came up with this idea not more than 2 months ago and started talking to people about it. And then we decided to code it. So if you're interested in seeing that journey, let me know in the comments below. Make sure you guys subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.